Belize was not a Latin country. Well, it was a British country first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So originally it was from British. I forgot what was the name. What they called Belize before. It was
British Honduras.
There we go. Yeah.
Well, I asked because there's this concept of Latin America. So Mexico essentially to Argentina in the south. Would you consider Belize to be a part of Latin America?
Let me see. Probably. Part of Latin America, but also Central America. It's everything because it's right there. It's right next to the Caribbean, and it's right next to Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala. So it's pretty close, yeah.
Okay. Do you think it's like half and half, or would you consider it like pretty much
half and half?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't know.
Well, what do you think? How would you define a Latin country?
A Latin country? Well, I would define it like it's mostly people that speak Spanish mostly, and here first language is English.
Like a part of Latin America?
In a sense, yes, I would think so. We have a lot of people here that speak Spanish. A lot of people that would be Belize. The first language is English, but they also speak Spanish, Creole, and again the different cultures have their own language. So the Garifuna people would speak Garifuna, and the Mayas speak their dialect.
What do you think makes a Latin country then? Just speaking Spanish?
No, we have the mestizo culture here, and they practice. There is a lot of different, like they have their Spanish dances, the food, the language. It's different.
No.
No? Why? Why not?
I don't know.
How would you define like a Latin country then?
I guess only in Spanish places.
Always speaking Spanish?
Yeah, only those one. We speak Spanish, we speak English, we both speak both language.
So you're half Latin?
Yeah, we do have.
Is Belize a Latin country?
No.
No? Why not?
Because it's mostly Spanish and Creole, English. It's not really a Latin country. It's rare someone comes from it's rare someone comes from other places. Only Guatemalan people would come
No
here.
Mexicans?
Some, not a lot.
I would not consider that. I know we're not a Latin country.
No?
No, we're not.
Why
No.
not?
We have always been an English-speaking country.
Yes.
We are unique in that way. We were settled by ex-Scottish pirates. Then we were administered by the English, or more specifically or properly the British. Now the Scottish are not British.
Right.
Well,
I've met
they are
them.
because they're part of the United Kingdom, but the United Kingdom only came into being around the 19th century to keep Ireland, Scotland, and England together. So Belize was settled by ex-Scottish pirates who refused to give up the trade of piracy, even after Spain and England had outlawed it. And they roamed these waters right off the coast of Belize. And eventually Spain and England decided to allow them to settle here. Then we were administered by England. So we're not Latin in any way. And besides, Latin as applied to the New World is a misnomer. Latin belongs in Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. But then how I'm a history major, and so we block Latin America to be all the former Spanish and Portuguese colonies. And so, but a lot of people also include Belize.
They're wrong. They're totally wrong. They need to familiarize themselves with Belize's history, which most people don't. And Belize is quite unique.
Yes.
The history of Belize, like I said, it was settled. The first arrival of the pirates on the mainland of Belize was around 1640. And Belize, after the English and the Spaniards decided to allow them to settle here, they cut logwood, which was used as a dye. We did not have synthetic dye at the time. And these grew right along the Belize River. And you needed maybe 2 or 3 guys to fall a tree. They didn't grow more than 30 feet high. And this was used as a dye. And they would ship them out on the boats to England. When synthetic dye came into play, we went to the mahogany. Mahogany also grew not too far from the river, but eventually they had to go deeper into the forest. That's when they brought the African slaves to Belize. But they came by way of Jamaica. They did not come directly from Africa. And we had gangs. That's how the slaves came to Belize. But the logwood cutters, for the most part, the woodcutters were mostly Scottish. England didn't really want to have anything to do with us. Even after repeated petitions to England, they refused to colonize us. We became a crown colony way after all the Central and South American nations. I will not use Latin because I consider it to be a misnomer. So, you need to get your history straight if you're going to talk about history. Just because it has been handed down, we're saying that's a term that should be used, does not necessarily make it true. Maybe for the sake of convenience, it's okay. Yeah. Excuse me half a moment.
No problem.
Back to the history of Belize. We're not a Latin country because we were settled by ex-Scottish pirates. We were administered by the English. We became a crown colony in 1862 eventually. As a matter of fact, we only had a superintendent here. We like I said, we were governed through Jamaica. The governor of Jamaica had final say in Belize. And these superintendents, these Englishmen, when they came here, well, the Scottish men, they took up with the African black women, the slaves. And of course, when their kids were born, they were free persons. And the English were absolutely appalled that white men, even though they were Scottish, would be having affairs, living actually, with black African women. But that's the way of the Scottish. They give them a good bottle of rum or whiskey and they're good to go, maybe a sword. So we're not Latin, not in the least, not nowhere, not even close. And from the European, the Scottish people, mixed with the African slave, we have the Creoles, which is our language, and also an ethnic group. And we also have mestizos, but most of the mestizos who came here came from southern Mexico at the time of the War of the Caste. When the Spaniards got the upper hand in the Yucatan, when the Mayas and the mestizos, well, particularly the Mayas, decided to go back because the Mayas had the upper hand. They were beginning to retake the Yucatan. Then they decided to go and plant their corn and their foodstuff. Then the Spaniards, or the Ladinos, took over. These are descendants of of Spanish people. They were born in the New World, but both their parents were from Spain. And these are the people who govern and rule and own Central and South America today. All these nations, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Salvador, all the way to Argentina, these are direct descendants of Spaniards. In Belize, that again is what does not make us Latin, because the people who own Belize now, who govern Belize, who have the power in Belize, are actually people who descended from the Scottish pirates and the black African woman. That was the first ethnic group. We had some Mayas here, but they had left. They returned around the 1850s when the Europeans began to really take over Guatemala and they started taking away their land. They came back into southern Belize, but this was a different group of Mayas. They had actually left Belize, and the ones who were here at the time of the arrival of the Europeans, they had left Belize, and they came back like around 1850 or 1860 in small groups, and they settled in southern Belize. But after the Creoles, you'd have the mestizos. And none of these people are directly descended from, both parents are, none of their both parents are from Europe. The mestizos are a mix of the European and the Native American, whatever that group might be, Maya, Aztec, Oaxacan, Zapotec, the Incas, those are mestizos. The Creoles are a mix of the European, and in Belize's case, which I think it's the only one, again, another unique thing about Belize, and the black African woman. Then, since then, we have had an influx of all sorts of different ethnicities. In the early 50s, a lot of Mennonites come here, German ancestry. Then we had the Lebanese. We have a fairly sizable Lebanese community in Belize. We also have East Indian people who came here in the early 19th century. They were brought here to pick up the labor after slavery was outlawed by the British. The slave trade was outlawed in 1833 by England, and in 1838 slavery was abolished in all its colonies. Does not mean that the colonies abided by that policy, but that was the official thing. Anyway, so Belize is a European African nation, first and foremost. The Mayas were here, but at the time of the arrival of the Europeans, the Mayas weren't anywhere near where they were. And the Mayas were completely defeated in Yucatan and in Guatemala. Guatemala has the largest population of Mayas today. I think about 5 million people, maybe more.
Yeah.
And the Mayas actually turned against each other and helped the conquistadors in defeating each other, because they always had their squabbles between each other. They were always waging warfare between each other. Once the moon was at a certain angle in the sky and Venus was high in the sky and large, that was a good time. That was an auspicious time to go and wage war against your enemies, which were your fellow Maya guys. So Belize, first and foremost, is Creole, then mestizos, then descendants of East Indians, then the Germans, the Mennonites, the Lebanese, and in the middle 70s we had a new influx of East Indians who were kicked out from Jamaica. Well, not kicked out, but they came here from Jamaica in like around 75, because Michael Manley, the then Prime Minister of Jamaica, saw that they were corrupting his civil service. They weren't paying their right taxes, they weren't paying their import duties, they were bribing everybody, which is still done in India, in Asia.
Yeah.
The bribery is a form of doing business,
Right.
but it always leads to a large part of the population being impoverished, and you have just to lead. Anyway, he began to apply methods to collect the proper amount of taxes that should be paid. So those East Indians came to Belize, starting around 75. Then they took over the household appliances business in Belize. But they would go back to India and bring their wives. We always had a few Chinese family who came along with the original East Indians to pick up the slack or the fall of labor after slavery was abolished. But there were more East Indians than Chinese. Recently, over maybe the past 10 or 15 years, we have had and still are having a heavy influx of Taiwanese. They now control the food business in Belize, the retail part of it,
Right.
all the processed food. I don't know who is sponsoring them, if it's the Taiwanese government,
I think the Taiwanese and the South Korean government do that, where they sponsor their people.
well, they claim it's their family. The University of Belize recently came out with a published survey of, I think, 60 Chinese businesses, and they're saying most of their funding came from their families. As a Belizean, living here all my life, I disagree. Because the average store for these guys, from the time they buy the land, because they don't go to the banks for funding, according to this survey, they get it from their family. The average cost to set up one of those stores from the time they buy the land, build the building, stock it up with inventory, and we're looking at about $750,000 Belize dollars to $1 million. If they had that kind of money, they would be in the U.S. They don't really want to be here. They want to be in the U.S. That's where it's at.
Yeah.
So I don't think that funding is coming from their family. Maybe the Taiwanese government, but they're industrious people. They're quite friendly. Of all the recent emigres to Belize, the recent arrivals, they are the ones who adapt the quickest. Even what I'm saying is, they would not outwardly disparage you or mistreat you or anything, and their kids, particularly the male ones, are allowed to mix with the average Belize kids. They play around, they run all over the place. Most of the other groups, particularly the newly arrived East Indians, don't do that. They tend to keep to themselves, even their kids. They don't allow them kids like after school to go play with other Belizean kids. But the Taiwanese, they do that. And they treat you like they have known you all their lives. So they are the ones, I think, who are adopting the fastest in Belize. But back to your original question, no, Belize is not a Latin American country. Yeah.